From 2011 until 2020, for almost 10 years, Giselle did not know that her own husband of 50 years was drugging her so that she could be assaulted by strange men from the internet. This is currently an ongoing case. The trial is still taking place, and it's presumed to be concluded in December of this year. Most of the in-depth information on the case is in French. There is a book written by the daughter, using her pen name Caroline Darren. It's titled And I Stopped Calling You Papa. I couldn't find an English translation of this book, so I took the French book and translated it page by page to give you a deep dive on this case. This book is one of the most insightful books I think I have ever read. It is so incredibly raw in its honest depiction of how one deals with such an intimate betrayal. Her vulnerability has provided us with so much insight into what happened, not just in this case but likely to women everywhere. So with that being said, a few disclaimers. Heavy themes of assault, family abuse, as well as intentional drugging and use of illegal substances. If that is too much for you today, please be safe, take care of yourself, and we will see you in the next one. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and comment your thoughts about this story. Dominique doesn't know it yet, but his wife is about to divorce him. They have been married for 50 years. They have 3 children together and have 6, almost 7 grandchildren. They're in their 60s, but Giselle, his wife, is about to divorce him. It's never an easy thing to tell your partner that you've been arrested. For what? There are these 2 girls at the supermarket. Well, the officer says there are 3 girls. There might have been a phone placed underneath their skirts as they bent down to grab items from the bottom shelf. The phone might have also been on camera mode, perhaps recording. He has been arrested for filming illegal secret upskirt videos of strangers at the supermarket. This 60-year-old man is crying, trying to explain to his wife that it must be old age. It must be the madness. I mean, maybe it's dementia. There's no way that this is really him. He's never done anything like this for the past 50 years, so why would he start now? He's trying to explain this whole thing. It's just silly. Giselle is almost kind of relieved. Maybe it's all some sort of big misunderstanding. Perhaps he was recording something with his phone, he dropped it, and then a woman happened to walk over it. In this moment of temporary madness, he just picked up his phone and saved the video. Giselle even follows her husband to the police station to sort things out. On the way, he does not seem anxious or stressed. This is all one big misunderstanding, surely. Why is she going to the police station? She found out about the video, yes, so she needs to go to the police station because they just need to do some paperwork now. The police are calling him. Yes, it's not a big deal. It's just a big misunderstanding. She's going as moral support. They are all going to figure this out. She waits in the waiting room while he gets taken into an interrogation room. After an hour, Giselle is asked to come into a room, and the officers have a few questions for her. For me, she asked, Madam, what are the adjectives that characterize your husband's personality? Well, my husband is caring, she replies. He's a very, very caring person, always ready to help. He's very much appreciated by those around him. We met when we were both 18 years old and shortly got married after that. And you would say that after all these years, you and your husband are still quite close? Well, yes, of course. We experience our lows, but we've always managed to overcome them. Do you have any friends in the area? Are you inviting them over often? Yes, of course. We have friends. We invite them over for lunch, sometimes dinner. We lead just very normal lives. The line of questioning is getting a little bit odd, but it just keeps getting weirder. Madam Giselle, do you take naps often? How often do you take these naps? How often do you wake up in the mornings feeling a little groggy? Do you always wake up feeling fresh every morning? How often are you and your husband intimate? Are you guys swingers? At this point, Giselle responds, Oh my gosh, no. I wouldn't stand the hands of another person on me. I need emotion when I connect with someone. I am a married woman. I am not a swinger. The officer looks at her with compassion. He pulls out a thick folder of files. The images I'm about to show you will not be pleasing to look at. She's confused. What images are you talking about? From the supermarket, he replies. She takes out her glasses and puts them on. In the very first photo she's shown, she sees a picture of herself. She's lying on her stomach on the bed, completely nude, unconscious. There is a stranger standing nude behind her. She does not know this man. Then, another photo, another strange man she does not know and does not remember. Another man. A new strange man each time, a different stranger. But she doesn't remember any of this. How could she not remember any of this? That's her bedside table. That's her lamp. Those are her bed sheets. That's her bed. That's her bedroom. After arresting Giselle's husband, Dominique, for filming upskirt videos in a supermarket, they searched his devices. In a folder on a USB drive labeled Abuses, they found nearly 20,000 digital files. Inside that folder they found new subfolders, at least 80 of them, each with names and descriptions of sexual acts. The name of each man that came to assault his wife, Giselle, had its own folder. There's a medical mystery in the family. Giselle is sick. Giselle's kids know that something is wrong with her. Sometimes she would call them, and in the middle of the phone conversation she would start rambling, or she would sound like she's in a fog. She doesn't understand what's going on or who she's on the phone with. Sometimes they would talk to her on Monday about something, call her on Tuesday, and she wouldn't remember a single thing from yesterday's conversation. Other times, she would be FaceTiming one of her 6 grandchildren, and while the kids would be excitedly telling her about their weekend, Giselle would just start asking some incoherent questions. The questions weren't even related to what the child was talking about, but the questions themselves didn't make sense. It's starting to scare the kids, like, what's wrong with Grandma? Caroline, one of Giselle's kids, would take the phone and ask Mom, what's going on? Are you all right? One time she asked Mom, what day is it today? Giselle couldn't even answer. Giselle did not know what day it was. Her 3 adult children live hundreds of miles away. They live in Paris while Giselle and her husband Dominique live in the south of France, in a tiny little town in the mountainside. This has been going on since 2011 and continued until 2020. During this whole time she wasn't doing well. Giselle's 3 adult children would have conversations about her. I'm worried about Mom. What if it's Alzheimer's? They would ask each other. When they asked about their dad's thoughts, Dominique would always downplay it. Your mother doesn't know how to pace herself. She's always on the move, she's hyperactive. If she could just rest without worrying about every little detail. You know how she is. But still, maybe it's best if she sees some sort of neurologist. No, she had her scans done, nothing. There is nothing wrong with her, they would respond. She spoke to multiple neurologists, but nothing was found to be wrong with her. Their uncle, a retired doctor, mentioned an analogy that made sense to the whole family. It was on par with what their dad was saying. The former doctor, the uncle, says, I think it's like when a vacuum cleaner's bag is full, the machine stops so it doesn't burn out. That's how you disconnect and recharge your batteries. She just needs to recharge. Everyone thought, that's pretty simple, maybe it just ends there. The solution is for her to just get some rest, enjoy retired life, take it easy and smell the roses, Giselle. But over the next 8 years, for most of Giselle's 60s, it only got worse. Giselle developed insomnia. She started losing chunks of her hair, and her weight began shedding off. She was already quite a frail woman, and it's alarming when someone at that age starts rapidly losing weight. She lost 17 pounds in the span of just a few years. She was scared that she was going to suffer some sort of stroke, to the point where Giselle stopped driving altogether. She thought, if I have a stroke on the road, God forbid, I might hurt someone or myself. There were times she remembered starting the evening, having dinner with a bunch of friends who came over, and then nothing. Just a blank after that. She doesn't know when they left. She doesn't know what happened during dinner. She doesn't know how she got to bed. She just wakes up the next morning with no memory of the night before. It was not getting better. At one point, one of her adult children, the youngest son, came over to visit for the weekend with his kids. Go say hi to Grandma and Grandpa, he told them. The truth is, he likely came over to make sure his mom was okay. But it wasn't okay. They're all seated at the dinner table, getting ready to eat, and after a few minutes a phone starts ringing. This seems to trigger something in Giselle. She reaches for it, but her elbow almost gives out. She's scrambling, nearly falling onto the table. It's like watching in slow motion. It's not a moment of genuine clumsiness. It looks as though she's drunk. Her body moves slowly, and she can't catch herself. It's as if her body is suddenly drained of all its energy, and she just deflates like a rag doll. Her son later tells his siblings, it was like she was under hypnosis. It was so strange, just motionless, limp. She had this blank stare all night. She wouldn't respond to us. Dad had to take her to bed. It wasn't until 2019 that Giselle went to see yet another neurologist. He told her melatonin. Take some melatonin to help you sleep? What, she thought. That's it? That's his solution. Over the years, Giselle had also suffered severe gynecological problems, which were similarly brushed off. Too much stress, they told her. Just calm down. It's impacting your whole system. On one occasion, Giselle was so frustrated that she jokingly told her husband, Dominique, "You must be drugging me. Normally I have an excellent memory. This doesn't make sense." She was completely joking, but Dominique suddenly broke down into tears. "You really think I could do something like that to you?" he asked. Giselle felt bad. It was just a joke, but she could see how it offended him. Despite everything, Dominique had been by her side. Through all their years, he had taken care of her as he had promised in their vows, even in their aging days. He always calmed their kids down, reassuring them, "You know how mom is. She just needs a good night's rest and she'll be back on her feet. Worrying about the garden, about this and that, obsessing over details, you know how she is." Dominique took her to every doctor's appointment, holding her hand, trying to think of all the reasons this might be happening to her. After all, what else was he supposed to say or do? He could never tell the doctors that it had anything to do with the lorazepam. He crushed up and mixed into her dinners at night before inviting special guests over. Dominique would post online with specific rules for his guests. 1. No cologne, fragrances, or tobacco. 2. Wash hands thoroughly with hot water or warm them by a heater upon entering. 3. Leave all clothes on the front porch before heading upstairs. 4. Park near the school and walk in the dark to avoid waking the neighbors. 5. Leave cell phones in the car. These rules were not random. Each had a specific purpose. No fragrances because, as he said, Giselle was a light sleeper. Washing hands in hot water prevented cold hands from startling her. Leaving clothes in the kitchen allowed for a quick escape if needed, without having to worry about picking up socks or underwear. Parking away from the house avoided suspicion from neighbors. Leaving phones in the car prevented any sounds that might wake someone in the house. Dominique would post pictures of Giselle, either nude or in skimpy lingerie, in suggestive poses. In each photo, she was completely unconscious. He would even offer videos of previous strangers assaulting his wife to help his guests get aroused. Dominique posted on a forum called Without Them Knowing, which was part of a larger website where chat messages were erased after a few hours. This controversial website had been linked to numerous investigations in France, including cases of pedophilia, racism, and drug sales. In this forum, people would share photos and videos of their partners without consent, often discussing non-consensual acts. Most of the time, their partners were drugged. Dominique wasn't interested in payment or trading one crime for another. He only wanted to film the acts. Once these men entered his marital home, Dominique meticulously filmed each assault. Some lasted 5 to 6 hours, and every moment was recorded and saved on his precious USB drive, in a file titled Abuses. When Giselle saw the videos and photos of herself, she broke down. "I was his thing," she said. Upon discovering the truth about the past 10 years of her marriage, and the root of her mysterious health issues, Giselle immediately left her husband of 50 years. She packed her things and left the house without looking back. Their daughter, Caroline, wrote in her book, "My mother left her marital home with hardly a tear. 50 years of a shared life suddenly vanished. I saw Giselle packing boxes, sorting through furniture, and emptying their closets with incredible dignity. She took down photos appearing frail and exhausted, yet modest and resilient. She had no choice but to leave. As one family member put it, for crimes like these, what they call chemical submission, there's no other option." In France, chemical submission often refers to situations where someone is forced to submit through drugs. While this term can cover instances of date rape, it typically applies to cases where the perpetrator is someone familiar, like a friend or even a partner. It's an especially insidious form of assault, because the victim usually has no idea what's happening to them. Chemical submission is especially hard to detect. Months, even years, can pass without anyone realizing the victim was drugged. It's like flipping off a switch. The person becomes a puppet, entirely at the mercy of the aggressor. There's an illusion that the victim won't feel or remember anything, but that's not true. Even if they don't recall the events, their body and unconscious state bear the scars of brutality. Caroline, Giselle's daughter, recalled how her father offered her mother to complete strangers without even demanding they use protection. He sometimes even forbade the use of condoms. Later, Giselle would receive devastating news. One of the men who assaulted her had HIV and had come to attack her 6 times. After visiting the hospital, Giselle's test results for HIV came back negative, but she was diagnosed with 4 treatable STDs. However, if left untreated, one of these could lead to cervical cancer. Because she was in a long-term, faithful marriage, no one tested her for STDs, assuming it was unnecessary. When Giselle was filmed, Dominique was there. He filmed the assaults, watching as they occurred. Their daughter, Caroline, who had built a peaceful, stable life, had no idea. She was 42 years old, living a simple, privileged life with her husband, child, and fulfilling job. She described her world as mundane, revolving around her family, until she discovered that her mother had been assaulted by at least 50 men, with her father as the primary instigator. Caroline said, "My 42-year-old life, I have a job I'm passionate about, a husband, a child, a house. A simple life, ignorant of earthquakes. Privileged. But nobody values the mundane until it's lost." In 2020, Caroline's son Tom was almost 6.5. During the pandemic, Caroline taught him how to wear a mask for school, finding it almost cute that they made masks small enough for little faces. She took a photo of him and posted it on Facebook. Within moments, Dominique commented, "My poor little Tom. Good luck for this rather special back to school. Your papa loves you." That would be the last time Caroline interacted with her father. On November 2, 2020, her husband, Paul, received a voicemail on the family landline. Caroline was at work, so Paul picked up the phone and heard Giselle's voice. "It's me. It's urgent. It concerns Dominique. Call me back, please." Caroline says they're instantly going into a panic. Paul is panicking because this is the height of COVID, and Dominique has respiratory problems. They don't know what's going to happen. Naturally, they believe he's in the ICU. But then another voicemail comes through. "You have one unheard voicemail from the local police lieutenant." Paul doesn't listen to that one. Instead, he calls his mother-in-law back first. "Wait, what's going on? Giselle, what's happening?" "Dominique. He's going to be incarcerated. He was caught in the act filming under the skirts of 3 women in a supermarket. He was held in custody for 48 hours, then released. In the meantime, the police had searched his mobile phone, several SIM cards, his camcorder, and his laptop. It's much more serious than that. The facts are much more serious. Caroline's mom says she'll call Paul back once Caroline is home because she needs both of them there to tell them at the same time. In the meantime, Paul calls the police station back and they tell him, "We have found videos showing your mother-in-law asleep, visibly drugged, with men assaulting her. 73 men as we speak. We have identified at least 50 of them. Your father-in-law was very organized. He photographed and filmed all the acts. I personally had a lot of trouble watching all the videos, but we are far from having finished assessing everything." Paul and the police are terrified for Giselle's life. The number of drugs that must have been carelessly, recklessly, and heartlessly shoved into her system. She's elderly, and now all the trauma that comes with this, but also Paul is terrified for his wife Caroline. How is she going to handle this about her parents? That evening, Caroline walks in through the front door. Tom is running around going crazy because he's completely ignorant of all this. Tom is a child, but Paul is just staring straight at his wife, his face serious. At that exact moment, Caroline's phone rings. It's her mom. Caroline says that in moments of trauma, particularly traumatic shock, people often remember just one detail. Sometimes it's a smell, a noise, or some sort of sensation. Something tiny becomes enormous. Something they will remember forever. In that moment, Caroline remembers looking past Paul and staring at the oven. In white blocky numbers, it reads 8:25. 8:25 p.m. She thinks, "I would be living the last seconds of a normal life." In the blur of the book, Caroline details hearing her mom's voice shakily telling her, "Your father invited men to the house when I was unconscious in our room. I saw several pictures of me asleep, lying on my stomach on my bed with different men. Each time all strangers." Giselle stated that Caroline made a noise, akin to an animal being wounded. Her daughter just made this noise, it was like a howl. Giselle tells her daughter about being in the police station where the officers asked her to identify one of the videos, but the photos were already too unbearable to look at, let alone a video. She said, "I thought my heart was going to stop beating." The officer told her, "Sorry, ma'am, but what your husband has done is monstrous." "I'm so sorry." Caroline can't help but think about her mom. She writes that her mother had become his toy, his thing, and they did not know how to protect her. Caroline's brothers are alerted, all three of them. They rush to meet up with Giselle and take her away from their small mountain town. Together they go to the police station, and the siblings are all adults. They're informed, "Your father has been drugging your mother regularly for at least 8 years to assault her. He filmed her and posted some images on the internet since September 2013. He has invited at least 53 individuals to abuse your unconscious mother. He posted photos of her to bait them and shared his fantasies. He did not request financial compensation." Caroline said she found that more perverted, more perverse. She said, "My father has always had money problems, but he did not do business with my mother. That means he was acting purely for his own pleasure." Caroline had to know. She asked the detective sitting there, "I don't even know if I want to know the answer to this. Did my father show any remorse for my mother, for his children, for his grandchildren, for betraying his whole family like this? No, your father simply thanked us for taking the weight off his shoulders." Caroline and her siblings leave the police station, fuming. But right when they get to their parents' house, Dominique is already detained at this point, so he's not there. They're trying to help Giselle pack her things to leave. Caroline gets a call from the police officers. "Hello," they say. "You need to come back to the police station." "Well, surely I can wait till tomorrow?" "No, you cannot." She remembers checking the clock. 5:25 p.m. The kitchen microwave is singed into her brain, and she knows that this is an omen. This can't be good. It only gets worse when she arrives at the police station with her little brother, Julian, fake name. They won't let her brother come into the room with her. He must wait outside. She sits down in an interrogation room, practically, and the officers show her these giant computer monitors with big blue folders. The officer is oddly calm as he tells her, "There is nothing that you cannot overcome in this life." To the daughter, she thinks, "What are you talking about? I just need to know if you recognize yourself in any of these photos." He shows her a few images. The first photo she sees is of a woman in bed with her but exposed. "It's not me," she insists. Then another picture appears. It seems like the same brown-haired woman but not the same bedroom or the same pajamas or even the same underwear. "I'm sorry, I don't recognize her." The officer looks down, and they all kind of look at each other very uncomfortably. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but could you look again? Do you not have the same brown spot on your cheek as the woman in these two pictures?" "What?" She looks back at the photos, and in that moment, tingling in her body and stars-like spots prevent her from seeing clearly. Her ears start buzzing. She goes backwards. It's her. She didn't recognize herself, probably because of the trauma, and she says, "No, I refuse." But also, those are her clothes. That's not her underwear. She's been put into some sort of lingerie that is not hers. She cannot even process this. She looks drugged. You know how it is when you see pictures of yourself if you've ever been blackout drunk? It's dangerous. If you see pictures of yourself, it almost doesn't look like you because your muscles aren't working like they normally do. It's a weird sensation. In this environment, those aren't her clothes. She doesn't recognize anything, but it's her. She starts panicking. How? How could he photograph her without waking her up? That's her biggest question. She wants to know, whose underwear am I wearing? Did he drug me? Did he abuse me? Did somebody else abuse me? When the buzzing finally stops, Caroline looks up and nods. Yes, that's me in the photos. She drops to her knees and becomes hysterical, to the point where Julian has to come and pick her up. On the way back to the house, Caroline is just thinking, there's no way I wasn't drugged. Just doesn't make sense. I'm normally an incredibly light sleeper. The smallest thing will wake me up. She tells her brother, I don't naturally sleep like that. The lights are on in the picture. The lights are too strong. I know myself. If I was asleep and someone turned on the light, I would wake up. I wake up every single time from the light. I never go to sleep dressed like that. In fact, I don't even recognize those clothes or that underwear. How could I be in underwear that I don't recognize or in that position on my stomach? It doesn't make any sense. How is that even possible? An even more unsettling part of all this is that so far, the documented abuse from Giselle is from 2013 to 2020. Eventually, they'll find more evidence that it spans from 2011 to 2020. One of the pictures Caroline's brother tells her looks like the old apartment that their parents used to live in, which was way before, around 2011. Meanwhile, Paul, Caroline's husband, isn't with her. It's just the three siblings helping Giselle at the house. Paul is at home taking care of their son, and they're watching the soccer game. This is like their tradition every single night during the season. The little boy turns to Paul and says, "Dad, tell Grandpa I'm betting on Team A." This is their nightly tradition. Usually, they call their grandpa to talk about their prediction for the game. Paul decides to send one last message to Dominique. It reads, "I'm writing to you a message that you will never read. I'm watching an OM match with your grandson. I hear him say, 'Tell Grandpa' every 5 minutes, but I won't be able to say anything more to Grandpa, and neither can I. I didn't get consent, but it's not non-consensual. Why? Because Dominique, the husband, was there, and he said it was okay. In his view as a husband, he owns his wife's body and can dispose of it as he wishes. There are even men who are ultra-conservative, believing that a husband can give consent on behalf of his wife. This logic implies that since the husband was present, it's not assault. For instance, in a prison context, if a prison guard is present, it can't be considered assault even with a makeshift weapon. One perpetrator stated, if it was assault, it was unintentional. He didn't feel remorse because he didn't go there with the intention of assaulting someone, so he doesn't see himself as a bad person. Another claimed he didn't know she was unconscious because she was lying face down. They argued that she was consenting and just pretending to be asleep. However, in most of the footage they are whispering, actively trying not to wake her up. In one video, a man is heard assaulting Giselle saying, "It's crazy she doesn't wake up," to which Dominique responds, "I've been like this for years." A lot of the documented abuse also involves Dominique drugging and assaulting his wife. Another man argued it wasn't his fault because it was during COVID lockdowns, and he was in a long-distance relationship. He claimed there was no other way to meet people for intimate relations, so he went on this forum. He acknowledged that bad things happen, but considered it just unfortunate circumstances. During the pandemic, lockdowns shouldn't justify committing felonies. A truck driver mentioned that Giselle being completely submissive and objectified truly excited him. The IT guy from the bank denied assaulting Giselle, but the police showed him a message he sent to Dominique that read, "Does the sleeping pill work? Let me know when it kicks in because I still have 20 minutes of driving ahead to get there." CP images were found on his computer. Some perpetrators during depositions prided themselves on being part of the CCK community, where they participate in intimate relations with other people's partners while that partner watches. Caroline notes that while most of the perpetrators acknowledge the immoral nature of their actions, none express empathy or remorse for the mother. They are often unaware that they are dangerous criminals. Giselle asserts, "All I have to say is it is an insult to my intelligence. These individuals were totally aware of my state. I never knowingly took part in any of this." To those who deny it was assault, she says, "For once in your life, take responsibility for your acts." Caroline emphasizes that victims are often terrorized, muzzled by fear, and weighed down by shame and guilt. Her mother, like many other women, is guilty of nothing. This situation is significant because, in France, it is Giselle and the victim's right to have a closed-door trial. This allows them to live the rest of their lives without the press and media hounding them, enabling them to heal in peace. Nobody knows what happened, so they can recover without the spotlight. The perpetrators will still be tried and imprisoned, but it won't be public. However, that's not what Giselle wants. She and her daughter, Caroline, have been speaking with other victims of chemical submission and argue, why should the perpetrators get away easy? Why should they get to hide from the shame? Giselle would be the one to request that the trial be public. She said the 51 men involved should be confronted with the public gaze, fully aware of what this means for her. Everything about her life is being dug up. Every financial detail, every text message she has ever sent, and even the fact that she had an affair once during their 50-year marriage is being brought up repeatedly. She has to address these issues and answer questions about her personal life, which is now laid bare. It's not just about making the crime public. It's a complete invasion of privacy. Giselle is okay with it, though. She believes that the perpetrators should answer for their crimes to all the people. Giselle says, "You cannot want to help victims if you yourself are ashamed of being one." She refuses to have closed-door proceedings because, quote, "That's what the attackers would have wanted." She wants the shame to change sides so that it no longer rests with the victims, but instead with the perpetrators. During the investigation, a few more things were revealed. It's been a common theme that Dominique, Giselle's husband, would speak highly of his wife to friends and family. However, in the messages he shared with the other men who came to his house to assault Giselle, he spoke of her in the most degrading terms. He referred to her hundreds of times in ways that highlighted his excitement about the cocktail of drugs he had her under. He even asked other men if they liked it in the mode that he liked it. Dominique would dress Giselle in lingerie that she would never willingly purchase or wear. Just think about how drugged someone must be to be dressed in clothing they didn't choose. This suggests a surgical level of being sedated. For Giselle not to have even a slight recollection of events or a hint of suspicion is concerning. It wouldn't be surprising if the amount of drugs she was given was damaging her brain consistently. One expert commented that Giselle's state was likely closer to a coma than to sleep. He even taught others how to drug their partners, mentioning that if a wife smokes, it can alter the effects of the dosage. His advice: mix the drug with a little alcohol for a stronger effect. This is troubling because, as noted on the back of the medication, it's dangerous to mix it with alcohol. Yet, he encourages it because it intensifies the effects. There's a clear sense of pride in his ability to keep his wife in a coma-like state. Dominique would often post about his plans, revealing his intent to drug his wife. He mentioned in one post, "Last time I didn't force myself enough on the dosage, but now I did, so we're good to go," implying that he had increased the dosage. He would even send hand-drawn sketches and maps detailing where to park their car at the park, and how to walk to their house without triggering motion cameras or attracting the attention of neighbors. Although he never asked for financial compensation or a trade-off for the crimes committed against Giselle, it became clear that Dominique was not just inviting others over. He was also a perpetrator himself. He would go to other people's homes with the intention of assaulting drugged wives and victims. While it doesn't appear that the same men came to assault Giselle, Dominique acted as the drugger, filmer, facilitator, and assaulter. In one of his posts on a forum, Dominique recounted a failed attempt at assaulting another woman. He wrote about how he walked into a bedroom and found the victim had suspected her husband. She didn't drink the spiked drink he had prepared, pouring it down the sink instead. Pretending to be asleep, she turned on the light just as Dominique was pulling down his pants. He described the moment. "I was like a rabbit trapped in the headlights of a car. Damn, I thought I was done for." After that, he scolded the host husband for his lack of vigilance, claiming he had ruined the entire plan and simply left the scene. Will these women ever receive justice? It's alarming to consider how many victims there might be. Caroline, Giselle's daughter, echoed this sentiment, asking, "How many victims have my father created?" The question is chilling. New findings during the investigation revealed that there was an occasion when Dominique took Giselle to visit their daughter, Caroline, in Paris. On the drive back home, Giselle couldn't remember a single detail. This was during the day, and it raised concerns within the family because Giselle never sleeps in cars, yet she claimed to have slept for 8 hours straight during the trip. It didn't add up, especially since they were only on the road for about 30 minutes before her memory faded. The troubling implications became even more pronounced when authorities uncovered that Dominique had drugged Giselle to facilitate assaults at truck rest stops along the highway. She had no recollection of anything past leaving Caroline's house. In another disturbing revelation, Dominique would sometimes tie his wife to the bed. On one occasion, when Caroline and her family went on vacation, Dominique and Giselle house sat. Authorities later found videos of Giselle being unconscious and assaulted by a 34-year-old man in Caroline's house. The assault reportedly lasted several hours. When Caroline was shown screenshots of the video for verification, she was horrified. "How could he commit these acts of barbarism in my home? How are we going to be able to live normally in this house after all of this?" she questioned. The authorities assured her that this was not all they had found. They discovered more photographs, revealing Giselle unconscious and dressed in black lingerie in Caroline's vacation home. Dominique had even invited strangers over. While they were supposed to be watching over the house, Caroline expressed her deep anguish. Knowing strangers have entered my home to abuse my mother is unbearable. I feel like vomiting. Dominique's responses during the investigation raised further alarm. He had excuses for everything. At one point, he told investigators that he began drugging Giselle because he wanted her to wear certain lingerie outfits. He believed she would never agree to it voluntarily due to her modesty, so he took matters into his own hands. He would even post, "Last time I didn't force myself enough on the dosage, but now I did, so we're good to go," meaning he upped the dosage. He would also send hand-drawn sketches and maps of where to park their car at the park, and how to walk on foot to their house without triggering any motion cameras or alarming neighbors. Remember how he never asked for financial compensation or a trade-off for the crimes committed against Giselle. He did, however, go to other people's homes. Dominique was not just the one inviting rapists over. He was also a rapist himself. He would go to other people's homes with the intention of assaulting drugged wives and victims. It doesn't appear that the same men who came to assault Giselle were the ones he targeted elsewhere, but still he had been the drugger, the filmer, the facilitator, and also the assaulter. He writes on the forum that one time he was caught trying to assault a woman. He describes it as a failed operation. That night, I walked into the bedroom and the victim had clearly suspected her husband. She did not drink whatever he had put in her glass. She poured it down the sink. She pretended to be asleep to see what was going on before turning on the light. She heard whispering, heard someone coming in. And when she whipped on the light, there I was trying to pull off my pants. He writes, I was like a rabbit trapped in the headlights of a car. Damn, I thought I was done for. He pulls his pants down and boom. The lights turn on and she stands next to the bed. The rest of the post scolds the host husband for his lack of vigilance. He says he screwed up the entire plan and could have ruined everything. Will these women ever get justice? Do they know what's happening? Because I don't think this is the only woman Dominique went after or that is being offered up on these websites or forums by their husbands. Caroline asks, how many victims have there been? The question is dizzying. Other new findings include an occasion where Dominique took Giselle to visit their daughter, Caroline, at her house in Paris. On the drive back home, Giselle does not remember a single thing. This happened in the middle of the day during a road trip back home. It's worrisome for the whole family because she calls her kids saying, I don't remember a single thing from that drive. It has been reported that Dominique drugged his wife, so he could have her assaulted at truck rest stops along the highway. Giselle does not recall anything past leaving Caroline's house and getting back home. The kids are baffled because she never sleeps in cars. Even during a road trip, she might sleep for only 30 minutes. But this time, she slept for 8 hours and has no memory of the trip at all. Dominique would also tie his wife to the bed on some occasions. There was another instance when Caroline and her family went on vacation, and Dominique and Giselle house sat. The authorities found videos of Giselle being unconscious and assaulted by a 34-year-old man in Caroline's house. The assault lasted several hours. When Caroline was shown screenshots of the video to verify that it was her house, she said, "How could he commit these acts of barbarism in my home? How are we going to be able to live normally in this house after all of this?" The authorities then informed her that they found even more photographs. Giselle unconscious, dressed in black lingerie in Caroline's vacation home bedroom. Caroline asks, how could he do this in my privacy? Knowing strangers have entered my home to abuse my mother is unbearable. I feel like vomiting. Dominique has had some very odd responses during the investigation. He has excuses for everything. At one point, he told investigators that he only started drugging his wife so she would dress in lingerie because she would have never agreed to it due to her modesty. So he started drugging her. He does not appear to be mentally ill, even though that sounds like a mentally ill sentence. Court documents state that he described feeling the need to be all-powerful over the female body. He has referred to his wife hundreds of times in the videos while she is being assaulted by strangers, often calling her a degrading name. He later tells the judge he meant that as a compliment, insisting, "She is a saint, the love of my life." It is fascinating because just moments earlier, he was using degrading names for her in the crime videos. He states that Giselle was his first love and the only love of his whole life. Yet, folders on his computer are titled My Her Abuses. Dominique was asked if he was attracted to his daughter, To which he responded that he does not remember having nude photos of her in his possession, even though he must have drugged her, dressed her in lingerie, and taken those pictures. He states, "Yes, she is my daughter, but that doesn't mean anything to me." He adds, "You can see that, in addition, she is way too young compared to what I'm usually into. She's not my type at all. I never touched my daughter," which is a very weird response. Caroline stated that hearing those words filled her with an unquenchable rage. But the biggest revelation came in March, 4 months after the initial supermarket investigation. Both brothers, using fake names Julian and Thomas, along with their wives, were asked to come to the police station. It was discovered that photos of the daughter-in-laws were found. When he would visit, it doesn't appear that they were drugged, but he hid cameras in their bathrooms and bedrooms to take pictures and videos of them changing and getting undressed. He would post pictures of them onto these CD forums. Oddly enough, one of the crimes against one of his daughter-in-laws began when she became pregnant with his grandchild. That is a lot to unpack psychologically. In another picture of his other daughter-in-law, he had taken a picture of his computer screen with her image in it. In that same photo, he is just aggressively self-pleasuring while looking at her. He would then post those photos online with filthy, degrading comments against his family members. As if that weren't disturbing enough, they discovered he had also taken a few more photos of his daughter, Caroline, getting undressed as recently as 2020. In those, it doesn't appear that she was drugged. When she was visiting, he would hide hidden cameras throughout the house. Here's the crazy part. He always referred to his daughter's explicit photos as "my wife's daughter." He never said, "This is my daughter." Caroline says he disassociates himself from his status as a father because he sees them as mere objects. Even with all of that coming to light, he still has the audacity to write to one of his sons saying, "My son, I have thought for a long time since my detention before writing to a member of the family. I think your sensitivity as an artist will be able, I hope, to transmit these few words, which will be the last as a correction to all. I will respect your silence, which I understand. I try to do my best until these last terrible dark years of my personality. I'm thinking of all of you. I miss you all very much. I wish everyone many beautiful things in your lives. I miss all the little ones, even if the last one is unknown to me. Maybe it's better that way. Know that your mom is and will still remain the love of my life, like all of you. I will never forget your mother. I am aware of the harm and shame I have done to you, and I'm treating myself here. The deprivation of liberty is less difficult to bear than the deprivation of your absences. I love you all and I kiss you all. Sorry, Dad." What Caroline would state is, "No women in our family were spared by my father. Dominique has pled guilty to the charges against him, but there will still be a trial. He faces charges of aggravated administration of harmful substances and invasion of privacy by fixing, recording, or transmitting images of a person in a sensitive nature." A panel of 5 judges will determine the verdict and sentencing in December. The evidence against Dominique is overwhelming. There's no way he could plead not guilty. He had gone out of his way to hide the medications he was using to drug his own wife. He concealed them in the garage, inside one of his hiking boots that he barely wore. Inside that hiking boot was a sock, and underneath that sock were the medications, which he was using in combination with lorazepam and Ambien. Lorazepam is typically used to treat anxiety disorders. It is a benzodiazepine that helps calming chemicals in your brain work better. It tells your nerves to relax and slow down, making you feel less anxious and a bit sleepier. It's pretty strong and makes people feel very drowsy. You're not allowed to drive or even ride a bike while taking lorazepam. It's more often used as a short-term medication. Most severe side effects include, at this point, Giselle was likely experiencing some of these severe side effects: weakness, slurred speech, blurred vision, memory problems, short-term memory loss, loss of consciousness, and in severe cases, coma or death. Most medical professionals advise seeking medical attention immediately if you experience even a little of any of these symptoms. A side note, a lot of people think that the doctor should also be investigated because he is getting a lot of these medications prescribed to him. He is receiving a significant quantity of lorazepam and Ambien, 450 tablets in the space of a year, which is a lot. Additional evidence on top of that includes files saved under abuses and photos of family members posted online with degrading comments. The evidence is seemingly never-ending, And it does not appear that he is going to finish off this trial with any remaining ounce of dignity. Since the start of this trial, he has taken to trying to make it seem like his wife Giselle had multiple affairs outside of their marriage. He has also tried to blame his actions on the fact that his father was not a good man. He alleges that he was assaulted as a child when he was hospitalized for a sickness, which he claims has caused something in his brain to malfunction. He is facing 20 years in prison. What? 20 years? How is that possible? Yes, 20 years, and people are upset about that, trying to get more. How old is he? He is 71 now. Many wonder why there were no signs or suspicions throughout the 50 years of their marriage. Often, people say they were the perfect couple, but upon reviewing court documents it seems they were just that, perfect on the outside. However, many people around them observed signs that were unsettling. The entire family was confused. Were they just oblivious? Was it right in front of their faces the whole time and they didn't see it? Would anybody else have noticed? In her book, Caroline tries to recount any and all red flags that might have come up over the years, hoping to help someone else. However, she concludes that there really are none. The only incident Caroline recalls is a falling out Giselle had with one of her best friends from college. This friend would often come over to stay with the family, and Giselle's kids knew her well and loved her. One day, she just vanished from their lives. The story Giselle's kids heard was that there was a big falling out between Giselle and her best friend, and for some reason, their dad Dominique was a big part of it. Giselle's best friend had told her, "Dominique has been trying to be inappropriate with me while I've been staying at your house. You don't know who you live with. You don't know the man you're sleeping with. It's time to open your eyes. Your husband is not who you think he is." Giselle backed her husband as there was no proof. She spoke to the friend, got her side of the story, and then spoke to her husband, hearing his side. But remember, she met Dominique when they were 18. They had been married for over 20 years. I'm not saying this is what I would do in this situation, but many people can understand why she may have chosen to believe her husband. They had built a life together, and this had never happened before. It's not like multiple friends had brought this to her attention. Giselle tried to question Dominique, but he just denied everything. After that, she and her college best friend stopped talking for good. A 20-year friendship was destroyed. Looking back, Caroline thinks this was the beginning of her father's insidious hold on their mother. Eventually, it just got worse when Giselle's mysterious health problems escalated. He told her, "You can't drive. You can't go out alone." Giselle couldn't remember things, and Dominique was the only one there to remind her, "Hey honey, you have to remember to do this. I'll go shopping for you. You can't handle shopping. I'll take care of the finances. It's too stressful for you." At the time, Giselle probably felt grateful to have someone who wasn't annoyed by her health issues, someone who wanted to shield her from the world. It turns out, though, he was drugging her and allowing men to assault her. When Giselle finally divorced him, she realized that he hadn't been managing the finances out of love. He had taken out significant loans in her name. Almost all the loans were in her name. Not only did he shatter her entire existence, but he left her in a mountain of debt to climb out of while she was trying to recover from this level of betrayal. Obviously, this is not a sign of anything, but Caroline writes in her book about how her father never made her uncomfortable. However, her father's father had. Caroline's grandpa, Dominique's dad, had been married for most of his life. Together with his wife, they adopted a little girl named Lucille. This was Dominique's adoptive sister. After Dominique's mom passed away, his dad ended up marrying the adopted daughter he had raised since she was little. Everyone in the family called it an incestuous, inappropriate relationship with a vulnerable person. She was 30 years younger than him. In fact, she was just 25 when they got married. I mean, he raised her, and now he was marrying her, practically full-on abusing her. Caroline remembers going to her grandpa's house and seeing her step-grandma Lucille. At 25, she could hardly write, and wasn't even allowed to change the TV or radio station without her husband's consent. All she did all day long was run errands for him, put the laundry away, and do the dishes like a prisoner. Sometimes they would see her go out into the back garden, staring off into the horizon, and she would pick at fistfuls of her hair, literally ripping it out as a trauma response. After her husband's death, she was hospitalized, not from grief, but likely from the PTSD of trauma and abuse. Everyone practically disowned Grandpa at this point, including Dominique. He never confronted his father about it. He just backed away. Nobody wanted to associate with him anymore. I mean, it's weird. Caroline now thinks back and says to her father, "From your father, you really took the worst." A few other red flags appeared. There was this strange incident in 2011 when the youngest brother, Julian, and his future wife were visiting their parents for the weekend. One day, Julian's future wife came up to him, looking uncomfortable and a little panicked. "What's going on?" he asked. She had just caught Dominique aggressively self-pleasuring behind his computer screen in his office, but the door was left wide open. I mean, he had guests over. Either he forgot, which is strange, or he almost wanted someone to catch him. Recently, Giselle stated that there was one incident around 2011 where she woke up in the middle of the night to find Dominique having intimate relations with her. She knows now, in 2024, that it was sexual assault because she didn't consent. At that moment, she simply asked, "What are you doing?" and went back to sleep. She thought he had the urge to do it since they were married, so she didn't take it any further. There was another incident in 2015 when Giselle looked over and saw a text message from an unknown number pop up on Dominique's phone. The text read, "I did not receive the photos yet." She asked, "Who's that from?" He gave some sort of excuse at the time that made sense. In another instance, Dominique gave her a beer to drink, but it had a strange green hue. She was upset and wanted to return it to the store to let them know they got a bad batch. He quickly took it from her, poured it down the sink and said, "You're being dramatic. We don't have to do all of that." She didn't think anything of it and just thought, maybe I'm being a Karen. Other signs included Dominique being very bad with money, but that hardly counts as a sign. Caroline remembers growing up. He was always in need of money and would never pay her back. He would even go into her savings and take all the money she earned from her summer jobs, which also explains how he didn't care to leave his wife in a pile of debt. Additionally, Dominique was obsessed with taking pictures of Giselle just going about her normal everyday life. She found it very annoying and would tell him to stop. But he would respond, "You should be pleased that after 50 years, your husband still wants to take photos of you." At that moment she thought it was flattering, but it annoyed her, and she told him to stop anyway. He casually asked her once, "Do you want to try swinging?" Yes, these isolated incidents of me telling you back to back seem like a lot of signs, but he never pressured her or brought it up again. This was over the span of 50 years. She said categorically no to swinging, and he never asked again or pressured her. There's one incident that I do think is much more alarming, but I don't think it ties to this. When she was caught for her affair, he grabbed her by the collar of her shirt and slammed her against the wall in anger. The kids witnessed this, and they also wrote it off as a very sticky situation. She was having an affair. That's about it. That's all they could come up with unless new revelations are revealed during the trial. But he truly was so good at masking his behavior that there wasn't even an inkling that he was drugging her. Not a single suspicion. Caroline said he was the one who took her to school early in the morning to avoid her taking the bus. He never hesitated to pick her up on weekends at any time of the night before she got her driver's license, and he would pick her up from her friend's house. He always made sure to comfort her when she was heartbroken or when her mother and she disagreed and fought. He would take her side. The only thing he always told his kids was, "May your journey of life be better than mine." That was his only wish as a father, that their journey of life be easier and better than his. To them, it just seemed like there were clearly small things, little things here and there, but nothing that would ever make them suspect Dominique was doing this. Some things did raise suspicions, like okay, he's not a good person, he's not good with his finances, he's a little strange, and he definitely shouldn't have slammed his wife against the wall. It never happened again, but it was still not acceptable. In comparison to other families, there was nothing so standout alarming that would make them freak out. Ultimately, their lives were so ordinary. Too ordinary, Caroline says. Giselle always thought of her family as happy. She believed her parents were very content. "We had everything," Giselle says. "We had a great life. I don't understand how this could have happened. We had it all, everything we needed to be happy." While all of this unfolded, Giselle filed for divorce upon discovering the secret tapes of abuse. Initially, she was overwhelmed by thoughts of self-harm. "I feel dirty, soiled, betrayed," she expressed. "It feels like a tsunami has hit me, like I've been struck by a high-speed train." Despite her pain, She wanted to see it through for her kids and the other victims. During the trial's opening days, Giselle remarked, "My world is falling apart. Everything I've built over the years is crumbling. Those videos are scenes of horror for me. I lay on the bed motionless, being assaulted. They treated me like a rag doll, like a garbage bag. It's barbaric. Don't talk to me about those scenes. There are at least 200 scenes of sexual assault, 90 by strangers, while the rest feature Giselle's husband recording himself assaulting her while she was drugged. Some of the assaults lasted 6 hours. Despite this, she stated that their intimate life had always seemed normal, without any indication that he was asking her to try darker stuff. Caroline, Giselle's daughter, wrote in her book about the burden of being both the child of the victim and the child of the perpetrator. In an instant, my life wavered in a dizzying way. The past has been swept away, but for what future? Our family shipwreck is like a labyrinth where, for nearly 2 years, each step forward has opened a new door to more sordid revelations. Caroline struggled to understand the true identity of the man who raised her. Even today, I wonder how I did not see anything or suspect anything. I will never forgive what he committed over so many years, yet I still have the image of the father I thought I knew. I still dream of him. He talks to me in my dreams and we laugh together. Waking up brings me back to a nightmare. Now I miss my father. Not the one who stands before the judges, but the man who took care of me for 42 years. I loved him so much before discovering this monstrosity." Facing the trial, Caroline felt torn. At first, a voice whispers to me, "Has he been able to adapt to prison life? Does he suffer from our absence and loneliness? What about the violence in this closed environment?" But another voice screams at me, "This is justice. Look at the harm he's done to us, to Mom, to our family. He is reaping what he sowed, and he deserves it." Caroline found Giselle's book to be one of the most powerful she had ever read. The raw and unforgiving honesty struck her deeply. With the upcoming trial, Giselle expressed her fear. "I'm afraid I won't be able to hate him." She wanted to tell him that the happy image of their family had shattered. "Now you are the organizer of orgies, and you're a terrible liar. Mom tells me about the last breakfast we had together. It was absolutely normal. How much insincerity is required for someone to convincingly show a near-comical level of tranquility for all these years? What if an overdose had killed my mom? What if she hadn't woken up? Not for a moment did my father ever think that my mom's heart might not hold." Caroline added, "I feel betrayed and ashamed to be the daughter of this tormentor." The family tried to stay strong together, but it was not easy. In early 2020, when all of this unfolded, the initial chaos affected everyone differently. Caroline remembered her mother worrying aloud as if she had Stockholm Syndrome. She would hear my mom rambling, "Your father is not well. He's suffering. I must have missed something in the last few years. I must have missed a sign." Caroline would often have to walk away or hang up the phone, feeling betrayed by her mother's misplaced sympathy for her father. Why isn't she using all that energy to worry about herself or her children? Caroline thought. Or her grandchildren who are now without a grandfather? I can't believe this. My mother is worried about the man who, for 10 years, tormented us. Then, Caroline found out why her father was barred from reaching out to his family. He had written a letter to a family friend to be delivered to Giselle, whom he referred to as his puppet. The letter read, "My friends, I know that I disappointed you. But you are my only link to the outside world because I'm not allowed to contact my family, whom I miss terribly. Apart from the anguish, the fear, the emptiness, and the loneliness, it is awful. I know I'm here to pay for what I've done to the love of my life, to my family, and to my friends, but it's too late. I don't know where I'm going or how it's going to end." He continued, "I come to you in the name of past friendships because I need you to pick up some things for me and drop them off at the entrance of the prison. My light brown jacket, my Adidas jacket, my Nike sneakers, a big gray wool sweater, and a belt without a big buckle. If you still have a little friendship for me, I ask you to be indulgent. Send money to my commissary. I'm in jail for a long time, and I have so many questions about everything. What will become of home and everything else? The worst here is the boredom. We only go out for an hour a day on walks, and there are 2 of us per cell. It's quite hard for me. I don't sleep at night and I lose weight, but that's probably what I deserve. The end of the year without family is going to be very sad for me. I hope my love will get over it. That's what I want." I love her so much. I realize it even more here, even though she has filed for divorce. She will remain my eternal love. She is a saint, and I have not been able to keep her. If you can, please send me mail and the addresses of my 3 children. I don't remember any of them by heart. Caroline was shocked. What? He wants to write to his kids, to Giselle and to one of my brothers. The letter ignited a tiny bit of sympathy, which was precisely what Dominique would have wanted. Caroline and her older brother found the letter even more pathetic, leading to a brief rift in their relationship. Caroline showed the letter to a judge. Look, he's trying to contact us and ruin our lives. Soon enough, he wrote another letter blaming Caroline for everything. Because of you, everyone in prison knows what I'm in here for, he wrote. I'm going to be lynched in here. It's unforgiving. It's urgent. I'm going to have to harm myself at least. I will try to hold out for as long as I can. I'm not looking for pity, just a little comfort. Life is too hard here, especially with Caroline's anger. After 3 months of incarceration, Caroline finally wrote to him, reflecting on the past. You always knew what you were doing and still do to this day. The only difference is that I now know who you are. We all know. I ask you to stop your manipulation from now on. I will go to the end of this. We will go all the way because to me you no longer exist and you never will. There were many frustrating times when Caroline and her mom's grief just didn't align. While Caroline wanted to rewrite her past memories with the truth, it seemed her mom preferred to leave the past behind as good memories. She would tell her daughter, "You forget that he was not always the devil you describe. He did so much for you and your brothers. I was happy with him. I loved him so much, and I prefer to remember the good times." Caroline would think, this is a separate life now. Eventually, Caroline would come to understand her mom's perspective, as this was also Giselle's first time going through all of this. It was her way of protecting herself. My mom can't accept reality, Caroline writes. To admit that my father dangerously and deliberately manipulated her would mean recognizing the truth. If she acknowledges his true nature, she would collapse on the spot. Everyone looks at her and says she's a strong woman, but inside she's a pile of ruins. Everything inside needs to be rebuilt. During this time before the trial, Thomas, the eldest son, welcomed another child into the family. He texted a picture to the family group chat of his new baby boy with the message, "Welcome to the world, our son. We have lost a large oak tree on which we like to rest, Dominique, but we have gained a new young shoot, like a seed that we will have to protect." Caroline writes in her book, "Our family history has revealed a social phenomenon that is still largely underestimated in France. Chemical submission in the interfamily and social sphere. It's much more widespread than we think. We all know about date rape, but can we imagine being chemically drugged and abused by a loved one with medication straight out of the family's medicine cabinet?" According to France's Drug Security Authority, 42% of credible reports of date rape drug usage in 2021 occurred in private spaces, not at bars or clubs, but between people who already knew each other. Caroline reflects on the impact of chemical submission on a family. "I had peace and you annihilated it." Many French netizens are calling for this trial to raise awareness about the abuse of chemical submission within families and the larger social sphere. Many women in France still associate the idea of a rapist with the creepy man in an alleyway, but the reality is often someone you know. For example, a senator in France was recently accused of drugging lawmaker Sandrine by slipping ecstasy into her champagne during a work function with the intention of assaulting her. He insisted on toasting with champagne several times. When she finally drank it, she began to feel palpitations and sweating. She left for the hospital, feeling like she was going to die. He followed her to the courtyard, trying to prevent her from leaving. Once at the hospital, she reported everything. The police searched the senator's home and found ecstasy in his apartment. His defense has been that it was a handling error, claiming he wasn't trying to drug her, just mishandling the ecstasy. He has been suspended, and the case is being investigated. Sandrine hopes that this will draw attention to the use of drugs to prey on women. Netizens have also pointed out that Giselle had gone to many doctors, neurologists, gynecologists during this time, but nobody even theorized that chemical submission could be the answer. She noted, "There's no training for doctors to pinpoint what someone suffering from this might look like." Many activists believe it's time for France to change its outdated definition of rape. Currently, French law defines it as sexual penetration committed by violence, coercion, or surprise. Many lawmakers want to clarify that it happens anytime there is no consent, emphasizing that consent can be withdrawn at any moment and cannot exist when someone is impaired. One significant challenge is that chemical submission is not only difficult to detect, but it is also hard to treat. In her book, Caroline briefly describes how she started experiencing severe panic attacks during this ordeal. She was hospitalized, ending up in a psychiatric ward due to extreme distress. The doctors prescribed her the very medication she had been drugged with. They told her, "You cannot leave until you take these anti-anxiety meds." But taking those pills was the last thing someone with her trauma would want. She was effectively being forced to relive her trauma, and the situation felt deeply unfair. Now here's where things take a shocking turn. Dominique is under investigation for the assault and murder of a 23-year-old woman in 1991, as well as the attempted assault of a 19-year-old in 1999. Reports state that a realtor was showing a house when a man, pretending to be a prospective buyer, showed up with a box cutter, attempting to assault her. She managed to escape. According to some reports, Dominique has admitted to the attempted assault in 1999, but denies involvement in the murder, even though the same MO was used. They were both realtors showing houses, and there was attempted sexual assault involved as well as a murder case. Remember how he got arrested for taking pictures up skirts at the supermarket? That was actually his second arrest for that offense. He had been arrested before, but Giselle never knew about it because they told him he had no prior offenses and let him go. They took his DNA samples and did nothing with them. They didn't test them in the database and just submitted them. Now, after his second arrest, I believe they had reopened several closed cases, including a 1999 attempted sexual assault case that had been opened again. The DNA was a match, which is why they searched all of his belongings and built a case against him. It wasn't just by chance that he was caught. He was recording people, which probably would have led to a search of his devices anyway. Many people are speculating that he didn't just start committing these types of crimes at 60 years old. They believe he had been assaulting women for years. People are saying that he didn't start filming his assaults until 2010, but it's hard to believe he only began then. The fact that he's now 70 means he almost lived his whole life without getting caught. It's terrifying that his family did not catch on to anything, which suggests that many of his victims may have also escaped detection. There's a possibility that if he is indeed involved in the 1991 murder, he could exhibit characteristics of a serial killer. The way he compartmentalizes his crimes is very reminiscent of serial killer behavior. It's not just about being a perverse man. It's much more extreme and frightening because he managed to evade suspicion for his entire life. Everyone liked him, he was a pleasant guy. When asked what would have happened if the victim in the 1999 attempted assault hadn't escaped, he replied, "I don't know. I had no intentions of assaulting her. I just intended to immobilize her, perhaps just to look at her." As of now, there's no firm answer on whether he will be tried for those earlier crimes. Additionally, the police have identified another woman who was assaulted by Dominique at least a dozen times between 2015 and 2020. This particular victim had been in a state of chemical submission because of her husband, and Dominique would come and assault her. The trial might be complicated because the victim is still in contact with her partner and prefers not to file a complaint against either her husband or Dominique. If these new cases go to trial, Dominique may face much longer than 20 years in prison. Since then, Dominique's nieces have come forward, stating they noticed troubling signs about their uncle. They alleged that when they were younger, he insisted on playing doctor and would only agree to buy them toys if they undressed. Dominique has rejected these claims, and it appears the nieces never told their parents or alerted anyone, perhaps rationalizing it in their minds until now. Dominique has denied the allegations, calling them disgusting. Most comments about this case reflect the anger and disbelief many feel. For instance, one person commented, "All 72 of them in one session? Her body must be sore and overflowing." Another stated, "I think the perpetrators are the ones who needed to take the drugs to commit the act. At least for me, I would need a lot of drugs to do that with a 70-year-old. Others expressed disbelief, suggesting that if the wife had agreed to wife swapping, none of this would have happened. There's a sentiment among many that it's alarming he found 70 willing participants without a single one reporting him to the authorities. Some even jokingly asked if France still has the guillotine. Regarding the doctors involved, some believe they dismissed her health issues as simply needing to lose weight or deal with hormonal changes. There's a theory that he didn't just start filming 10 years ago. He had likely been assaulting women for decades. Caroline commented on her mother, stating, "My mother has forged a mind of steel. It does not bend. She loves life whether it is good or bad. She stands tall, resembling a medieval queen, with her chin high and no complaints." Caroline described her mother as the true heroine amid the ruins, drugged, damaged, and cast into the world. At 70 years old, losing a partner is incredibly difficult. People often pass shortly after their partners die, even if you exclude the emotional trauma. There's so much to learn and relearn. Caroline's mother, Giselle, had to adapt to living on her own again, driving a car, maintaining a house, and managing paperwork. All tasks her husband used to handle. Now she must meet new people while navigating the ongoing trial and working through her trauma. Caroline wrote, "All that was left for me after 50 years of life together were 2 suitcases. I no longer have an identity. I don't know if I will ever rebuild myself." One of her mother's favorite mottos stood out to Caroline: "Continue to believe in life and in the beautiful things it has in store for you." As for her father, Caroline described him as the grave digger of families, the murderer of memories. Yet, she notes, "In the heart of the carnage, my mother's hand is still in mine." Together with her 2 brothers and their families, Caroline started an awareness campaign called "Don't Put Me to Sleep" to fight against drug-facilitated sexual assaults. Currently, the trials are ongoing, with a verdict expected by December 20th of this year. This case is unfolding in France right now. What are your thoughts? I was sifting through various English media sources, and the situation is dire. The book reveals much more than I ever imagined, and Caroline's raw recounting of the trauma they're enduring is incredibly impactful. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Please stay safe.